What's up, guys? Julian here again. Hope you all doing fine. Want to do a follow-up video on yesterday's sunscreen video just to cover the basics. So, some things that you might see on the packaging, like what is broad spectrum, and actually just showing you what the effects of the sun are on your skin and what happens if you actually don't use sunscreen. And like my video yesterday, I just want to keep it very simple and straightforward. There are a lot of things that you can research and get into the nitty gritty of. Like, you might be looking for a two-in-one product that's like also a moisturizer, or you're looking for something that has, certain ingredients, something like that. And yeah, I can cover that, but I think the most important thing is just to encourage you to get started, like I did, and for you to just be able to apply these basics so that you have a good foundation. So I found this article just to illustrate my point on using sunscreen and how without it the sun's really going to damage your skin. There was this article written by CNN Health, which they actually just took from another journal of science. Done some study, but let's just take a look at this one guy they talk about.
Fascination with this face. This is a trucker. This was published in a medical journal. This man spent 28 years driving his big rig on the road. See the left side of his face? That would be the side that is closest to his window. And how one side of his face has suffered from all that UV coming through that window. Our senior medical correspondent, Elizabeth Cohen, joins us. Elizabeth, when I first saw this, I thought it was a hoax. I thought it's not possible. He wouldn't have his window down for 28 years. And then I hear the window was up.
Right. We think that, those windows have a little bit of shading to them. It'll protect us from the sun, and it won't. Those UVA rays, and those are the ones that damage skin, like we see here. Those UVA rays come through. And so after 28 years, it did damage to that one side of his face. And you can see it looks so different from the other side of his face.
Damn, that's actually crazy to see. I mean, for most of us, we're not going to be exposed to that much sun every day for 28 years, but I can still see, if I'm going out quite a bit, not using sunscreen, then that might be an inevitability for me to actually see for my face. So, not to scare you guys, but, it's just really important to be preventative, not just for your looks, but again, also for this guy, maybe he might have some health complications later with skin cancer or something like that. So, yeah, just really important just that you take those precautions and use sunscreen. So, for most of this video, I just want to go through the basics with you. There's a lot to know about sunscreen. You can pick, what's the best for you, or you can look at all these different ingredients, but the bottom line is it's better to be using sunscreen over no sunscreen. So let's just talk about that first and what you're going to be seeing on sunscreen products. So beyond just using sunscreen, the FDA here actually recommends that you limit the amount of time that you spend in the sun, which makes sense. And when you are in the sun, obviously to use sunscreen, try and wear clothes also to cover your skin, especially the parts that would be exposed to the sun. That's not really possible for your skin unless we're all just wearing masks. So maybe it's a bit convenient that there's corona. But anyways, you should still be putting sunscreen on your face there. They also recommend that you use a broad spectrum sunscreen with SPF values of 15 or higher. So what I had researched is that with 15, it's pretty low. I don't know the exact percentage, but a lot of the UV rays still are going to penetrate into your skin. So honestly, higher the better. I think what I've seen is that SPF 50 is the most common, and so I would recommend going with that. Just be careful that some products might be marketing SPF 60 or higher, but from the research that I found, it's not conclusive that those ones actually offer a lot more protection. it kind of seems to cap off after a certain level, and it makes sense because there can be a product that is just protecting you 100%. And the last thing that they actually mention is to reapply sunscreen at least every 2 hours when you're going out. And so that's going to be the biggest thing. So having sunscreen and reapplying it, I know it's a bit tedious, but it's really going to make a difference, especially if you're on holidays, you're spending time on the beach, you're really going to want to reapply. Just set a timer and it's going to be easy. So it's this part from the FDA article that I want to go over the most, which is understanding the sunscreen label. So they talk about broad spectrum, and you'll probably see that a lot on the packaging for the sunscreens that you see in shops, markets, whatever. But what does that actually mean? All that means is that it's going to protect you from the sun's UV radiation. So there are two types of UV radiation you need to protect yourself from, UVA and UVB. And this broad spectrum means that it's going to protect you against both. I talked about it a little bit already before, but the product is also going to tell you what SPF it's rated for. SPF just stands for sun protection factor, and you don't need to understand this in too much detail, but the higher the better. Now, the higher doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to not tan as much. I know for some of you, you still want to get a good tan, but it's also important to have protection to your skin. But you can have a high SPF product as well as be able to, tan effectively. So in general, keep it simple. Try to find a product that has a higher SPF. Goes to, yep, 50, like I had mentioned before. Just be careful about marketing. Like some products might say SPF 60 or more, but they might be a lot more costly. I don't want you to fall into that trap that the higher is always better. There's kind of this plateau with the SPF in sunscreen, and so generally at 50, that's as high as it can go. Even with a higher rating, it doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily protect you as much. And I think those ones are probably going to be a bit more expensive. So I don't want you guys to be spending that much money. Just get something that works. Secondly, there are a ton of ingredients that you'll see in sunscreen. There are active ingredients and inactive ingredients. I honestly don't know too much about this, and this goes into more detail, and there are even distinctions about chemical sunscreens and physical sunscreens. But in general, I think you can ignore this, at least as a beginner. The only thing I would recommend when looking for a sunscreen is it's still important to look at the ingredients, and the things that you probably want to avoid in sunscreen are fragrances. So, as a sunscreen, I feel like I'm just looking for something basic, something that's going to do the job. Typically, when companies are adding fragrance or some scent, something like that to their product, it's going to make it more expensive for you. And secondly, you don't know what those chemicals are going to do to your body. It might sound natural, but at the same time, you might have some sort of allergic reaction to it. And that stuff is just not necessary. What you want sunscreen to do is just protect you from the sun. So if you take it from me, I would say just get something super simple, something that works. Okay, that wraps up today's video. Let me know if there's anything that's still unclear. I'll cover that in a future video. I think the next video I'll actually do is show you how I look for a product, or how I do some research. Because for me, I want to have a good product, one that does the job, but also is one that's not super expensive. And I'll show you how you can find something similar. All right, peace.